they admitted then, that's when they admitted that they had nicked my liver, but that I should be okay. They wouldn't keep me. They really didn't observe me or anything else. They literally had to wheel me out. I couldn't stand on my own. When I got home, I literally was going downhill and didn't realize it. As I popped out of my body, I remember looking down at me and the demon hands faded away. And I was like, I don't understand. I'm religious. And I was like, I
Right.
believe in God. How can there be demons trying to get me? I felt this warm presence. I felt the answer was actually your fears. Those were things that you created. I don't know how else to describe it. They're just everything over there is alive. We're not alive here. Everything is can't every
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of Soul Inspired. Today, I have Rachel with us. Rachel has had 2 near-death experiences and a spiritual type experience that we're going to dig into a little bit. So thank you so much, Rachel, for being on the show today.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. We were talking a little bit before, and I kind of told you you were kind of starting to tell me about the experience. I'm like, wait, let's get it for the show. And that's one of the things as a podcast host that comes up. People will start wanting to share right away. And then I go, wait a second, just let's get there first. And because I really want to dig in and really see what it was that you went through. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the first things I ask, and it's just, whatever you want to share that you're comfortable sharing. But what I usually try to find out first, if you can think of the first experience you had, whether it was one of the NDEs or the spiritual experience, if you think of that moment in your life, and then you think before that, if I could get a little information on who Rachel was up to that point.
Well, I've always had abilities. I was born with certain abilities. However, I was born into a family that was kind of divided. It was split. There, you had the religious side, and then you had what we'll call the spiritual side or the woo-woo side, however you're comfortable saying it. So I was more involved with the religious side of the family, so they would tell me not to talk about it. So I kind of always tread it very carefully during my time, growing up. I I used to drive my mom crazy because I used to say, "Mom, did I die?" And she'd be like, "What?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, that's not my dad." And then I'd be like, "Well, yeah, he's my dad, but he's not my dad. I died in a motorcycle accident." So I was always throwing things at her, and she was just like, "No, Rachel, you haven't died. It was
Mm.
probably a dream." So, she was always, but she was my mom was very, on the spiritual side. She kind of walked away from the religious side, but she didn't understand that I was actually picking up on past lives at that time. And I was also having premonition dreams, which she knew about. So those she told me not to talk about in front of anybody else in my family. She didn't care if I talked about it, outside the family, but just not in the family. But then after that, you start growing, you start getting older, you start doing the daily struggle and, trying to work your 9 to 5, raise your kids and everything else. So I had wanted to go off and, different journeys. At one time, I wanted to be into the holistic medicine. But my first husband passed away. So I kind of got thrown into doing other things that just sidetracked me along the way. And I guess if you are ready, I can start getting into when I actually had my first near death experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. First of all, sorry to hear that your first
Mm-hmm.
husband, because that's not everybody experiences that, to go
Oh,
that.
no.
So that probably had a little bit to do. I mean, it's interesting that you were so aware of things and yet you got into a marriage that eventually
I
lost your first
actually,
husband.
with him, I actually, we separated. So let me get that clear.
Okay.
We were separated at the time, but I actually dreamt of his death prior. I just didn't know it was his death.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I can get into some of the spiritual things that have happened. I was given certain symbols when I was younger that represented certain things. I guess you would call me everybody cringed when I said I had a dream because it was usually about a death, in the family and things of that nature. So if I said, Mom, I had a dream, she'd be like, who was it about? So it was more apprehensive if I said I had a dream at that time period in my life. But
Right.
I did dream about his was different versus some of the others because I actually dreamt about the actual date, which I've not ever done before, and I've not done it since. It's usually 3 days, 3 weeks, within that time frame. His has been the only one that I actually saw a date on the calendar. But with that being said too, um I've always believed in life after death because you couldn't be who I was and not. I
Mm-hmm.
had a spiritual connection since the day I was born. So I kind of understood that life continues after you pass. When people would sit there and say, like, um, no, the atheists, that, like, I would kind of look at them. They might have been looking at me like I had three heads, but I was actually looking at them like, how can you not believe it?
Right.
So it was the different perspectives, but you learn really quick when you're younger, when people start to look at you really odd, to
Mm-hmm.
not say anything. And that's kind of how I proceeded during my careers. Although I did have this is just going to be a side note, but I did have, I was really young. I was working in a customer service position, and there was this lady from George Mason University. And this is before I found out of some of the parapsychology programs that they had going on over there. And she had walked in, and this woman, she literally, I mean, she actually set me on a different path because I didn't even know this was prior to internet. I didn't know what parapsychology was. I didn't know what an empath was. I didn't know what a psychic was. In our family, it was more or less you have the ability, you're gifted, you can do this. So that's all I knew. I didn't have labels back then or titles, but she came in and she was saying stuff to me that she could not have possibly known. I've never laid eyes on a woman before. And then she was begging me to go into this program. And my guides actually spoke up one of the very first times that I heard them really clear tell me no.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just thanked her, and I went on, and then later on you heard about the MK Ultra that they were doing over there. So I was like,
Wow.
whoa, I think I got saved and didn't even know I was getting saved. But at any rate, I digressed.
You had experiences younger, like you felt things younger. You had these dreams, these premonitions. You were
Mm-hmm.
sharing that, but you were coming from a religious background in a sense from your family side. And
Mm-hmm.
then as you get a bit older, you start becoming aware of your guides because of this incident that you didn't go and do this work or get into this field of work, right?
That was the first time being clairaudient.
Okay, okay. And the interesting thing is, and we'll get into your NDE now, but the interesting thing is I hear about some of these people I talk to, including yourself and other guests, is that they had this belief system pretty young. I always felt like kind of like confused as to what I was doing in this world. That was the only way I would say it, but there was not an understanding of the afterlife. Okay, I didn't actually know whether we exist further, and that's what actually kickstarted my anxiety in my teens because I thought we actually just perished and became dust, and it freaked me out. It made me think like, oh my God, then what am I doing? What's the purpose? And it put me into this anxiety state for years, and that was what kickstarted my NDE obsession in reading. And I'm like, if I need to know for sure. So I started reading as much material as I could, and then I was like, wow, this is a whole other world. That's really interesting. So thanks for sharing that. How did the first experience you had with the near-death experience happen? Like, would you be able to kind of give us some detail on how that came to be?
Well, what had ended up happening is that I was working in a position to where I was working with benefits. I was working with people in the retirement industry. And I started getting a sense, it was probably I'm going to go ahead and say it was probably a year before anything happened that I wasn't feeling quite right. So I went to the doctors and everything else, and they checked me out, and I they kept telling my guides at that point were like throwing information in front of me, and I was so busy, I really wasn't paying attention. And then one day I had it was some kind of attack. It was very painful front to back. I don't know how to explain it, but it shot my liver's enzymes up. They ended up taking me to the hospital. They ended up sending me to a specialist. I ended up, getting all kinds of tests. Well, they said that, they couldn't figure it out. And they said, well, it might be your gallbladder. So what ended up happening was that I was, at that point in time, I really literally went nowhere without a Bible. A Bible was in my hand. I mean, I leaned into religion because I was really feeling that I felt like I was disassociating from life itself a couple months prior to this, which that happened again. I don't know if that's regular for people or not, but it was for me. That was my experience. I literally started disassociating with life itself. It was like I was going down a checklist. So they said, well, let's, maybe your liver enzymes are so jacked because your gallbladder. So I was like, at this point, I was like, okay, fine, So I went into surgery. And then after the surgery, I was having, some difficulty coming out of the anesthesia. And they kept yelling at me and, telling me to breathe and stuff like that. So I did. So they let me lay there for a while, and I'll never forget this. It was one of my other doctors. I never saw the surgeon again, by the way. One of my other doctors that I had that had delivered my children actually walked by and he said, Rachel? And I said, yes. And he goes, what are you in here for? And I said, they removed my gallbladder. And he goes, why are you still in here? Because I was in the transition room, before they actually, put you in a room. And he went and he grabbed a nurse, and he grabbed my chart. He came back. He was so upset because I didn't know this at the time. He literally thought that I was really, really, really ill because of the way I looked, and I wasn't breathing right or anything else. And he had heard me. So he came in, he said, Rachel, he goes, I've asked them to send your surgeon to you. Well, what had happened is he accidentally nicked my liver while I was in surgery. And I have a blood disorder where if I don't bind properly with my iron and things like that. So I lost a lot of blood. And I don't know what the procedure was or not, but at any rate, I left the hospital after a period of time. I left the hospital because the surgeon called in and said I would be fine to leave. I just had to, wake up. So I started to leave, and I didn't get like 15 minutes from the hospital before all this water started coming all over the place. I had no clue what was going on. I went back to the emergency room, and they admitted then, that's when they admitted that they had nicked my liver, but that I should be okay, that it was the saline and all this other stuff. And they wouldn't keep me. They really didn't observe me or anything else. They literally had to wheel me out. I couldn't stand on my own. They literally had to help me into my vehicle. And that night when I went to sleep, or when I got home, I literally was going downhill and didn't realize it because I just had a bunch of professionals tell me I was fine. And I started seeing that this is the part where right before I popped out, is the best way I can explain it. I started seeing all these, and this is going to be a little bit freaky, but it wasn't freaky once I got the answer. I started seeing like all these demon hands, and I was literally struggling with them. And as I popped out of my body, I remember looking down at me and the demon hands faded away. And I was like, I don't understand. And I remember saying that I don't understand how I'm religious. And I was like, I
Right.
believe in God. How can there be demons trying to get me? And I felt this warm presence, and then so I just I didn't see anybody, but I felt the answer was that was actually your fears. Those were things that you created. You are the one struggling with wanting to stay and wanting to leave, and you created this because you were fear. It was fear. I was literally seeing fear shaped like demons. And I remember I kind of said, oh, and then I was like, I've always I was one of those children that you hear about that always used to say, I want to go home, even if I was home. I've always done that my entire life, you know. So I was like, I'm going home. So I was like ecstatic. And somebody said, no, it's not your time. And I was like, oh no, it is my time, you know. So I got like deposited, the best way I can say it, I got deposited into this flower field that was literally alive. And I there was a gateway or an arch. It wasn't a tunnel, but it was a gateway or an arch, but it was completely black. And I was like, wait a minute, there's supposed to be a light there. And they kept saying, Rachel, it's not your time. And I was like, yes, it is. It is my time. And they were like, no, it's not. And I remember I was sitting in the field of flowers, and I was really absorbed in the fact that I could feel them, that the colors were alive. Everything was alive. And I transposed that as to when I was alive in the physical plane, I was dead. And I literally just thought, well, you're alive here, you're dead there. And they were like, I didn't want to go back to being dead because I was alive there. So they were
Right.
like, Rachel, you really have to go back. And it's not your time. So I was really getting upset. And I remember being asked, and this wasn't the first time I was asked, if I wanted to remember. And I was like, what do you mean? Do I want to remember? I don't want to go back. And I was literally not wanting, so I was so not what you call like upset. I was just being really like, no, that's my answer. I don't want to go back. So next thing I know, I was being put back into my body. And that is the worst feeling that I could say I have ever experienced, being put back into my body, being slammed back into my body. I woke up, I was crying, I was depressed for days. It was really, I don't know how to say it. It was very emotional being dead again. And I didn't want to be dead. I wanted to be alive. And that's how I kept thinking about it in my head. So I ended up, I had to have like a transfusion, you know. I was just really just out of it, you know. Just I really was, I didn't really want to say anything to anybody about what happened, because I was really depressed, to be honest with you. It was just like I was almost embarrassed that I didn't want to come back. I had small kids, and you know, I was almost embarrassed at the fact that I did not want to come back here, that I was just happy leaving everybody and just like, nope, I'm home. I'm going home. Although I wasn't at home yet. I was in I call it my holding station, you know. So that was the first experience that I had. And then the second experience, now that was in 2010. So the next experience I had, I believe this one was just more along the lines of a spiritual push, because the first time they subdued love that I felt, like that love feeling that you get. But the second time, when I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't want to say that it was a near death experience, because I didn't get put in the flower field. I didn't talk to anybody. But what happened was, when I woke up gasping for air, but that love feeling that surrounds you, and that I knew instantly that I had been home, and that I had went there again. And I literally slammed my head on the pillow like 3 times, trying to get that feeling back, and
Wow.
trying to get back in it. So once again, I went into the depression, because I knew I'd been home, and that they literally had wiped my memory of it. So, and I had suffered at that point in time from sleep apnea. So the only thing I could think of is that maybe I had stopped breathing. I don't know. I don't really want to justify that as a near death experience, because I didn't really have the experience. I had the love feeling. So that was that one. Now, the one that I just recently had in 2021, that one, it was a little bit different.
Okay.
Because what ended up happening was that I was getting really, I explained to you, I have the binding problem with the blood, and I have to get infusions every now and then, because I just can't retain the iron. So what ended up happening was, you're right around the time period, the last infusion I had was 2020 in April, and you're in the big, can you say it, COVID? You're in the big C word era, where everybody's got to wear the mask and everything else. And I had to go in there and get it done. So it was 2020, but I didn't feel right afterwards. And that usually doesn't happen. So they ended up, trying to see me and everything else. And you're, I don't know how to explain it. You're not really, everybody's at a distance when they're doing, the checkups and everything else. And I kept telling the doctor I didn't feel right. Something was wrong. And he, just, I got dismissed. Everybody, they're wearing 3 masks on their face, and, and just freaking out and everything. I don't think I was really being paid attention to. So I was like, all right, but I started doing the disassociating thing again. But the difference is that this time, prior to, I had some premonition dreams, and I had to leave my house. So I went to visit my son, and it was almost like I had to finish up things. Best way I know how to explain it. I had to finish up and clear out certain cycles before I could go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing that. And then I started seeing like this energy being next to me all the time, wherever I went. There was this, never have I experienced that before. This energy being next to me. And it was almost as if they were keeping me going, because I had, without knowing it, what they classified as a muscle wasting disease. So my heart was giving out. I had no way of knowing this at that time. So what ended up happening, to get to it, was that when I was struggling, my son asked me, I was with him, my oldest son, he was asking me a couple times, do you want to go to the hospital? I was in a highly polarized state that literally, I figured that if I went, I'd be dead for sure. And I didn't want to be in that position, in that hospital, one that had done me wrong before. And I think I was put there intentionally because of that, to be honest with you. I think that's why I was told that I had to go there, because that was the hospital that had really done me wrong the first time. So I really didn't want to revisit that hospital again. because I no longer live in the state. So, any rate, to make a long story short, um, I was struggling to walk. I barely could walk. I was struggling, and I was hiding this from my son for most of the time. He would work, he'd come home, and he would get up like 4 o'clock in the morning. So, we only had to really exchange time for maybe an hour, hour and a half when he got home. So a couple of times he said, "Mom, you're not really looking too good. Do you want to go to the hospital?" I said, "No, no, no, I'm fine. I'm fine." And he was like, "Are you sure?" And I'd be like, "Yes, yes, yes, I'm fine." So what ended up happening was the energy being started literally following me everywhere. And I went into my room that night, and I remember I actually got a fan out because I didn't feel I could breathe. So I put the fan in front of me to try to get air, because I did not feel I could breathe. And I went to sleep, and at some point I left my body on the bed again, but I wasn't anywhere except I was still there. So I walked out in the hall, and I had this urge to want to see myself because I could see that I was in the bed.
Mhm. And
I walked to the hall, and my son's dog was in the hall, and he or she really, she started breathing like really heavy. She was panting, and her eyes were really big, and she was looking at me. And before I could make it to the mirror, I was gone, and I was put on a bus. Now, I was put on a silver bus. Normally, when I've had premonition dreams in the past, it's always been a school bus for different types of dreams I've had. It's always been a school bus. This time it was a silver bus. And I heard my guides, say, "Rachel, you have a decision that you have to make." And I was like, "Am I dead?" I remember asking that, "Am I dead?" Because I'm ready to go home. So they were like, you could help people, you could do this, they were talking to me, and they were like, "There's a lot of things that you have yet to do that you could do, but if you wanted to go home, you can go home, but you have to make that decision yourself." So they put me on a bus. Now, one thing about spirit guides you have to know is that sometimes in order for growth to happen, bad things have to happen. So it's not like there are these fairy tale, Cinderella going to make everything okay. Sometimes you do have experiences that aren't that great, and you were put there. Your guides kind of led you there because you had to go through that growth experience. Just because you have spirit guides doesn't mean your life is going to be hunky-dory. In fact, you're more aware of things, and you kind of get the sense that or at least I've kind of got the sense that I'm about to hit a growth, something something's gonna go down. Yeah. So they put me on this bus, and they were very, actually very smart about it, because there's one thing that I've always done is I've helped other people, and I've always been in positions in my life where I have been of service to people, in this lifetime. And what ended up happening is they were showing me people that needed my help, which I really thought was unfair for a few minutes. I did. I remember sitting on this silver bus, and I was thinking, this is really unfair. And I was like, am I ever going to get to go home? And they wouldn't talk to me. So I sat there, and I watched these people of what I could do and what I couldn't do. And I finally made the decision that I wanted to help them. So I got off the bus, and then what happened is I realized that it wasn't things in the future I was seeing, it was just different scenarios. So I banged to get back on the bus, and they were like, "No." And then I saw Yeshua. And what happened then was that all I can say is that he literally touched my head. I don't know, I'm trying not to get emotional now,
Wow.
but he told me soon that I would be home with him. And that I had things I had to do. So I stayed. And after that, the energy being kind of disappeared, but my life started to rearrange. And what happened after that was that I went through the dark night of the soul. This is the best way you could describe it. People were being moved out of my life that I think had I went home, they would have experienced something different. So all of a sudden I started losing everybody. I started losing my dogs. I started losing, my son graduated, literally left that night. And I mean, just everybody was moving out. There wasn't even a place where I could take a breath. And then it was like my mom passed. It was like everything. Now, that is something that had they showed me that my mom was going to pass when I was going through my last near-death experience, that I probably would have continued home just to be there for her when she got there because of our relationship. But everybody, it ended up being that I was the last person with her. I actually coached her through, she was in hospice for 2 weeks. She had a stroke. She was in hospice for 2 weeks. I was the only person that could be with her. My sister was ill. She couldn't make it. So I was corresponding back and forth with her as I was there with my mom. And I started feeling all these people step up. So I started telling my mom, why I was with her. I started naming people I didn't know. And she would be like, she was shaking her head and she was saying things. And they also couldn't understand how I understood my mother. I understood everything she was saying. I could feel my mother talking to me before she even tried to talk to me. So that was different. I was experiencing telepathy without really understanding that I was experiencing telepathy. So that was not in my abilities before. And then I started seeing or started feeling, okay, I'm going to just say it this way, like channeling is part of mediumship, which I did not understand channeling then, knew nothing about it. And mediumship, I did understand, but it was not the way I thought it would be. I dreamt about deaths. I didn't really interact with somebody who had passed on the other side. So there was only like a few times in dreams that they would come to me, and then they would have to tamp down their energy because once again, they're alive over there. We're dead here.
Right.
It's the best way I can explain it. So with my mom, I started understanding that not only did I have a telepathic connection with, which I thought, well, it's because she's passing, and I'm also experiencing interacting with people that have passed. So I kind of got quiet, and I really wasn't telling anybody that. They did ask me, how did I know, a couple times, and I was just like, well, didn't you hear? Yeah, I remember saying that the first couple times. Well, like, didn't you hear?
Yeah.
And they were like, no.
Right.
So I started getting really quiet, and I thought, okay, this is different. And then I started noticing in the news that things had happened, were happening then, that I said, that's already happened. They're regurgitating old news. And they were like, what are you talking about? So I would go back through, look it up, because it had already happened. I remember it already happening. So then you don't know me, but one like pet peeve that I have is like the Hadron Collider. I really just don't think they should ever mess with that. It should be just disbanded, and I could go on a rant that would be like hours long about that thing. So I started blaming the Hadron Collider. I was like,
Uh,
yeah, it's like punching holes and time things. But what it was is I didn't understand that I I I think what happened, and I can't prove it, but with all the incidents that happened, and with I would come when I got home, I really thought it was because of my near death experience that I felt almost like a museum type feeling, like when I would be in my house, like portals of time, and I didn't understand it. I would literally feel like these energetic portals. Never felt that before. I even would move sideways sometimes so I wouldn't feel it. And they were always like off to my left. And I just no, I'm sorry, to the right. The left is when I have different things come in. But I would feel like past things to the right, and I would really just start. I can't tell you how before I started realizing that maybe I did a time jump, that they collapsed a, another me. And the reason why I say that is because my guide started saying, Rachel, you it everybody makes these choices, and there are different timelines. There are alternate timelines. This was all new to me, so my brain was kind of like I was trying to dissect the information that they were giving me and try not to feel crazy at the same time, and was not telling anybody except for the few incidences. I'd be like, wait a minute, that already happened. Why are they reporting that now? That already happened. And it happened a couple times. Now I just don't even watch the news. I
right.
just I just I just stay away from it, because I mean it wasn't happening like every day, but there would be these like certain big news cycles, and I I'd be like, that already happened. So
Mm,
then the portal started, the energy portal started, and they started saying things, and then I started doing all these weird things that I never did before, like well, meditation. I never meditated before. Now I had to meditate. I had to go in there and I had to meditate. Would start clapping during my meditation, had no idea what I was doing. Started picking up all these energies of, like Egyptian energies, and then
wow.
then it has escalated since then. It's like now it's different. I can see like energy levels, probabilities. It's like my foresight has went off the charts. It's yeah, it has been
Wow.
an experience.
That was incredible. Thank you so much, first of all, for going through the experiences you've had.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's more that you're still like, I'm sure there's all, these are just probably the big ones, and there's
Mm-hmm.
more that keeps happening. This is probably why we had talked about how you associated a little bit with the interview I had with Stephen Noack. He was on my previous show, and he talked about portal, or he talked about these, I can't explain it because I haven't experienced it, but it was the things that you were speaking of.
Mm-hmm.
When he had passed, there was kind of like these portal type things that he had healing with,
Yes.
and he was dealing with them. And it was, I remember when he was talking, I was like, I feel like I'm on like not Star Trek, but Stargate, or some kind of just in some other realm. So there was that kind of stuff. And then you also speak about the idea of, I think a lot of people, now I shouldn't speak for everyone, but I've had moments where I hear a news article, I'm like, why is that out again? That already happened. And I'll find out that it didn't, that was the first of it. And I'll go, whoa. And I don't say anything because I feel like, okay, I'm losing my mind or something. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it has to do. I remember there was a short period of time where I was obsessed with the Mandela effect and all
Oh,
these
don't get me
different things.
started.
Yeah. And then I had to stop because I was like, where am I? Like, it was like, I need to still like experience life and enjoy the football games I watch and the like, just like I was like, I can't go down that rabbit hole too far. And I'm sure you can relate, but
Yes,
your experiences are really fascinating because you had kind of a classic, you had three different types of experiences. You had the first one was kind of the classic experience where you're in
exactly.
between, in that in between. What was interesting, I don't know which one it was you said that you seen the arch, but it wasn't lit up. Some archway that was, you were looking for the light because you wanted to go to that light, but it wasn't out there yet. So I think that was the first
No,
one, right? Was that the first
yes.
experience? So that's why that one seems as classic as what I normally get with people. You
Mm-hmm.
experience the garden that was alive.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, let me just dig there for a second. I'm going to jump into different areas and then you can explain different things if you'd like. But when
Mm-hmm.
you say things were alive, like you said that the flowers felt alive and the colors were alive. Um,
They had a consciousness.
so
They,
were you communicating with them? Is that what you meant by alive, or what do you mean alive? Like,
yes, it was like if you could feel electricity without shocking yourself, it was, I don't, it's like a pure energy. And, but they had a consciousness. I mean, you could feel them being extremely happy because their purpose was just growing and being there, soaking up what I'm going to call the sun. I don't know if it was the sun, it was just a big, bright white light, but not the white light I was looking for, not
right,
that one, you
right,
know.
right.
But it was kind of like, it was kind of like, eh, I'm the only way I can explain it was everything was alive. I think it was sometime after that. I'm not one to watch a lot of movies or TV, but Robin Williams did a movie, What Dreams May Become, where he, I think there was a dog or something that was in a flower. Everything was alive, and then he went to that really. I've only watched it once in my life because I can't watch it because of what happens in the beginning. I'm an empath. It literally tore me up
Mhm.
for weeks. So I try to avoid anything that is going to be super sensitive.
Mhm.
You know, certain commercials can jack me up for like 3 weeks. You know, so
Wow.
I kind of don't watch anything unless it's woo woo. Then I will kind of get into it a little bit,
Right.
but if it's certain things, but his movie, that movie came really really close in the live part of it.
Mhm.
It's
It
not
makes you
100%,
it
but
makes you wonder
close
where.
to conveying it.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that movie. It makes you wonder where that idea came from. Like who, like, I don't know. I haven't dug into that, but I've had a couple people tell me that that movie is as close as you can get, but it's still humanistic. It's still, we're still here. Things look different. They look brighter. There's more colors. It's just more aware or more
Yeah,
alive,
you
like you
can't
say.
you can't describe the colors, but I think the reason why, for one, they're living colors. We don't perceive things here the same way. I remember, once again, I told you this kind of, I don't know if I told you or not, but our abilities run in the family, right? My son, this is just going to be a short jot off, but my son, when my grandmother passed away, my oldest son was in the back of the car, and I was taking somebody somewhere, and all of a sudden he goes, "Oh," and I went, "What?" And he goes, "The colors," and I went, "What colors?" And then I felt the hair go up on my neck because I felt my grandmother. And before he
Mhm.
said it, I felt her. And I kind of like froze a little bit. And he said, "Grandma, showing me all the colors where she's at." He even said, they're not like our colors, mommy. And I'm just like, oh my God. So
Right.
I didn't discourage him from it. I just said, that was back then. And I was just like, yeah, but this was before my near death experience. So I really couldn't at that time relate to it.
Mhm.
I just thought he meant colors.
Right.
But now that I had that first near death experience, I know exactly what it means. The colors are, I don't know how else to describe it. They're just everything over there is alive. We're not alive here. Everything is
Right. Right.
everything is
We're
tamped
not, we're
down.
not, that'll be I'll put that
Everything.
as the headline for your episode. We're not alive. I'm sure
No,
that will
we're
get
not.
clicks. We're not
We're
alive.
not alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything is so diluted over here because when that second experience I told you, the love, it you have I have not ever experienced, I've not ever done drugs or drank or anything like that. So the only thing I could say is I could see how somebody could get addicted to something because that love feeling, I literally slammed my head on the pillow like 3 times, give it back, give it back, give it back. And
Wow.
that is an iota of what people go through with withdrawal. They're in my hearts because it was insane. It was totally insane.
So it
And
was like
that
the
is,
worst. Yeah, it was like the worst drug addiction you could have because
yes.
you wanted to feel that. It's probably the same reason why a lot of NDErs will say like the love over there is so beyond what we could hold in this human body. It wouldn't allow us to, we would explode. So even a piece of it would be so, it would just, we wouldn't be able to live. Like we wouldn't be able to function, right? I think that's what
No.
I'm getting from it. Like we have our day-to-day lives and we have our families and our sports and our TV or our movies or whatever we're doing, our careers. How do you do
Hmm.
that if you're not feeling the possibility of what is actually a possibility, so of love. So um yeah, just describing why it was alive. I've tried to have people describe those things. The one thing I thought you were really first time I've ever heard it like this was the demon hands when
Oh
you
my gosh.
realize, yeah, like fearful, of course. But then what's interesting, because I've had quite a few people tell me about this, and they go, and then all of a sudden they go from like a demonic type situation to like this beautiful grass, and they meet God or Jesus, and they have this great experience, and they go, hey, by the way, what do you think that was about? And they'll be like, I don't really know. Like a lot of them don't know. They're like, why did I see that at first? I don't know why I saw that. But you said something fascinating. It's the first I've heard of it. And you said that it, you, I don't know whether you came to realize this or you were told that it was the fears you were dealing with around some things that, is that right? The demons were
Yeah, I was
your
told
fears.
because I was actually insulted. I
Oh,
actually felt like I was insulted by having demons because you have to understand religion for me, although I came from a religious background, was not ever real to me
mm,
because when I was born, I knew I knew the other side. So there's just it's like telling, like, okay, if you hold up something like the color blue, a blue card, and you try to tell somebody for the life of you it's yellow, and I'm like, no, it's not, it's blue. But you learn to get quiet. You don't ever really say, okay, it's yellow. You don't ever do that. You just nod your head a lot, and that's it. But I was insulted that I actually had to fight demons, and they were like, those are your fears that you're struggling, you were you were struggling between staying and going. And that to me was always odd because, like I said, I've always wanted to go home, but it was my, I guess my physical consciousness, that understood that I had kids and,
mm-hmm.
daily responsibilities. So I was struggling because I don't think I really understood that I was dying and that's what I was doing. So I
Mm-hmm.
was struggling, and that's what it was. That's the demons were the struggle itself. But then as soon as I popped out of the body and was above it, then they just dissipated. I mean, they dissipated, but I still felt like I should not have had to go through that because I knew the truth. That's how
Right.
I felt, was I knew the truth. So why did I have to do that? but I didn't really understand that I was dying. I had no clue I was dying. I had no clue.
Do you feel, I want to not to focus too heavily on the fear and
Mm-hmm.
this part of it, but I do want to dig in a little bit just because I think what it could be, I mean, we talk about ego, we talk about who we are, these things that it's almost like the loss of who we are that can be fearful. But I think a big one is the loss of the people you love. So if you have your family, if you have
Mm-hmm.
your mother, your kids, your husband, your wife, the people that you just absolutely adore and love in this life. Now that you've had these experiences, should we be fearful that we'll never see them again? Or do you
Oh,
feel
no, 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 no.
so is that a
Mm-mm.
silly fear? Because I think that maybe you could have been holding that even coming out, right? There's this fear of loss. And
No,
so what do you feel
it
about
was
that?
responsibility. It was responsibility. I had all these responsibilities. All these responsibilities were in this physical life. Those were
Mm,
holding me down. I was struggling with physical responsibilities, fears of of not fulfilling responsibilities, or fears of, I can honestly say that probably since I've been born, I have never feared death. That is why I felt like it
wow.
was really, and I have to honestly say too, that although I had the Pentecostal, and they teach that hellfire, and I am not disregarding anybody who has that belief, but let me just say this, heaven is what you create within you. Okay. So is the hell that you're going to go to. If that is what you're holding on to, you will create your hell too. So if you were brought up in a spiritual background and you die, and before you come back, and I'm sure that their near death experience, that they don't always have the joyful experience. They have the adverse, the
Mm,
bad experience. And that is because, one, they're going to come back, their life generally for the most part transforms, and they go off into a spiritual journey, regardless of where they're at on that chart, but it's usually spiritual in the sense of they have a greater awareness that there is life after death. They now know it, and they now understand that much of it. Some people can have those bad adverse effects, and they don't go running off towards what they consider Jesus, but they understand that they're reconciling, their life as they go along. They're clearing up past karmic debt. That's a lot of the cycle that's actually going on now. I won't get into that, but with the energies, you have a lot of people right now clearing a lot of karmic cycles. You have that, and I think I digressed. I'm sorry. What was your point?
No,
I
it was really
digressed.
no, you touched on some of it, but some of it was just the fear of loss of people that we have in our life that we love. And I try to acknowledge that people will still have those contacts. Like you still,
They are there.
yeah.
They are they're with you now. You
Hmm.
you actually
I know.
they're more alive than we are. And when they say like time is but a wisp, a vapor of smoke, that's absolute truth, because I don't really get into the time is doesn't exist or anything like that. I can only wrap my head around what I can wrap my head around. All
Mhm.
I know is that they are constantly with us, and if we need to talk to them, the more we open up, the more we'll hear them. But it's a lot of, your doubt, insecurity, do you think you're crazy? That's a lot of it too.
Mhm.
Is, like right now, I told you I've never felt, I was not ever telepathic before, and I was empathic, so you could pick up certain people's energy and how they are, or if something's going on. But I've not ever been telepathic before. That's a new one. And I can honestly say with that one, um it was stronger with my mom, although I have experienced it around the eclipse, actually, or around the eclipse
Right.
with one other person. And I can't say I honestly want that one.
Mm.
I can't
Mm.
honestly say I really want to experience that unless I know more about it. But apparently it is helping me with my channeling. I don't know that I'm learning as I go along too, or I don't know if learning is the right word. It's natural.
Like remembering.
Yeah, it's exactly remembering. It's exactly that,
Yeah,
remembering.
I truly am. The more people I talk to, I feel like, my old mindset was we're here to learn and grow. Sometimes I feel like yes, but I also feel like we're here to remember. We come in
Well,
with like the memory is fogged, and then it's this remembrance, and in that remembrance we are learning and growing. And
mhm.
does that make sense?
Yes, right now we're in right now we chose to come back to this time period. We chose it, and that is because just like people like you are elevating people to a higher consciousness. People are becoming more aware. And with that, also, you have a lot of, okay, like this year would be on a spiritual path of number 8, which is karmic. So you're going to see a lot of upsets going on in this year, a lot of karma being righted. I don't know if karma is the right word, but a lot of things that were upside down being right side up. A lot of chaos is going to ensue so things can get better. So you always hear that, after something really bad happens, people elevate their consciousness. I mean, they go up higher. Obviously, we couldn't even have this discussion, 50 years ago. People,
Right.
it just wouldn't have happened. I mean, you
Right.
really wouldn't have.
No.
But now, if you look at everybody, they're more open. But you also are hearing about people remembering their past lives. You've got people that are going for, what do they call it, past life regressions.
Mm-hmm.
You see things, certain cycles being understood, resolved, and wiped. So I've asked myself, because like I told you, my foresight has went definitely up. It's like you can see probabilities, like I want to say statistically, like a graph, like,
Yeah.
okay, the energy's higher here, but why am I not feeling that? So it's really weird, but you're clearing karma. So I now recognize a couple of my past lives, and I understand the freedom and responsibility theme that I've had in this life, and people that I have attracted into this life have also had the freedom and responsibility thing. And it's really weird once you start realizing that you never looked at it that way before, but it's like, now it makes so much sense. It didn't really make sense before. Let's take my first husband, for example, the freedom and responsibility. Never would you have paired us two up. Ever, ever, ever. It just, like, opposites, whatever. But we did have a certain responsibility with our parents, and our freedom was never, we just didn't have it. We always had to dance in between.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a common theme. And it was definitely a common theme with a lot of people I associated with, which you, before this last near death experience, I would not have realized it. This near death experience, I've actually connected with past lives and the portals. And I even had interdimensional beings, which that's another story. I do believe in them as well. You couldn't be me and not. I mean, my great great grandmother used to talk about the stick people on the mountains, that they would
Wow.
land. Yes. No, I mean, we had a woo woo side, and then we had the religious side. So,
Right.
so we had to be very, very careful. And
Yeah.
then, it was my grandmother had gifts. She didn't talk about them. I mean, it just was really, you just weren't free to
No.
explore.
No.
You knew it, and you got confirmation time and time again, but you really couldn't come out because you didn't want, people exercising those demons out of you. And if you've
Right.
ever been to a Pentecostal church, woo, you just don't want that to happen. So no.
So you truly do believe people's awareness is coming online a little bit more.
Oh yeah, most
And
definitely.
because one of the questions I was going to say to you was, you had a couple NDEs. I do ask a lot of people this. I mean, we don't all want to have NDEs. Um, most people I think would just rather have the DE at the end, the death experience once it's time and you can go on. And I've always tried to understand what I could tell people, the audience, people listening, how to have clarity, awareness, to open up their own gifts, things like that, without having to have an NDE. It would sometimes meditation is suggested. Do you have any suggestions for people
Meditation
like
would
that?
be the number one thing. Meditation, and it doesn't have to be sitting still. It could be anything as simple as, going for a walk. I highly, highly, highly suggest, even if you're not meditating, to go out in nature, because the energy in everything is really, I'm not saying we're all energetic. Everything is energetic. Your house is energetic. Everything is energetic.
Mm-hmm.
But there's different degrees to this energy. Okay. So if you want to get the most natural opening and to start to elevate your mind, you go outside, and you start to decipher what this is. Just a tip. This you would just start to listen, and I don't mean generically listen. Start to pull it apart, like, what was that, at a distance? What kind of bird was that? What kind of frog was that? Tree frog, a cicada, and if you're not in a suburban type or country type, it doesn't matter. Go to a park. Go by running water. Water is the best conductor. Oh my God, go take a shower. Go take a shower or a bath. Water is the best conductor, especially if you're out in nature. It's like off the charts. But water is definitely one of the best conductors, one of the best, I'm going to, for lack of better terminology, memory cell. It's alive. Water is alive, and it's there. So it's going to help you start to open up. So nature and water, two things, especially if you're not one to be able to sit there and clear your mind, in meditation, that's what people have the problem with. But even that, it will, the more you do it, the more it'll drop off.
When you think about technology and you think of all the things that have changed, and a lot of us are stuck indoors, and it's kind of a way, it's an epidemic. So it is good to get out and get realigned with. I find that just myself. I'll be outside. I'll be like, oh my God, okay, here I am. Like, it's almost like there's like this reconnection I have, and I go, what am I doing? Like, I love what I do and all the different things I do, but there's times where I need that space to almost re-energize, like, the old batteries used to recharge, the charger batteries. I almost feel like I need that recharge all the time. Even, I live somewhere where it's not nice all year long. So even in the winter, but bundle up and go walk in a forest, like get something out there. Cause I do, when you say that, it hits me right away. Like, yeah. And I don't think there's many people that would say that. And you're like, no, that outdoors, I'm going to stay away from from the nature. I think most people know this. We just don't do it enough. So that is a great recommendation.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're trying to dissuade you against the sun. That is doing you a disservice. I don't even know why they are doing that. I have no clue. But the sun not only builds up your immunity, but it's also going to open you up as well. And it is definitely energy. And if you start looking at everything as energy, because that's all we are, except on this side, we're kind of a deader, tamped down, diluted, really like crusty energy versus what is over there.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
It's funny. I try to keep things as positive as possible, but sometimes I even call it like my meat suit. I use that term, and I'm like, God, that sounds so like terrible. Like it doesn't sound like a good thing to
No,
have.
it it
So,
it
but
is.
yeah,
It
yeah.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, but and then my message to everyone always listening is, you know, we are here. It's kind of going back to what you said before. We are here for a reason. And you
Mm-hmm.
know, you're the first to be really blatantly honest in the sense that I'm sure others have felt this where you're always wanting to go home. You're always like, oh my
Yep.
God, like, you know, but you're being blatantly honest. But I know but that's probably part of your experience and mission is to learn to be here too and to be present here. And like you said, to help others and these things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you work with others then with like anything in the spirit realm, or are you just doing this on your
Yes.
own? I ask that because I like some people like to connect with the guests I have. So I don't know if you have any way of people connecting with you or if is it more of a private thing you do?
No, well, back when I was working, I did it in private because I had to work, you know.
Mhm.
But what ended up happening was now, I, before I used to just do like, I've always been empathic, intuitive, clairvoyant. You want to name all the clairs? Yes, you know, I
Mhm.
got them. So I used to tarot cards. It's like a tool. And so I used to do tarot readings for people.
Mm.
Now I did suspend it during COVID though, because everybody was sorry. Everybody was just terrified, you know, of the fear was off the charts.
Mhm.
But now I'm back into it, but I'm also doing energy reads and I'm helping people. And I noticed that my abilities are definitely more heightened, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
And it's so right now I just like I'm word of mouth. I do readings. I've had people recommend me. I've been told that I have a gift, which I thank them for. But I haven't been what you call really
Like public in it.
yes,
Mhm.
and it's usually by word of mouth. I do have a tarot channel. It's really small on YouTube. I
Hey,
like fighting off of the algorithm. Maybe later on I'll get into it, but right now I do energy reads. And if people are interested, I'll shoot you an email that they can use
okay.
for that because I am recommended. It's like once you start getting that word of mouth and people realize that, you know, people I've never met before, know nothing about, and then they're like, oh my God, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but now I'm doing energy reads too, which is different for me. Where
Hmm.
before it was just like intuitive, helping them through certain things and telling them what the general possibilities are. You don't predict the future because the future uh, can change with just one decision, you know? So I think that's kind of what happened to me in the last near death experience was you it's like they showed me like a tree and the branches um and it's one trunk, but they showed me like trees and the branches and they just combined two of the branches. That's the best way they can
Wow.
describe it to me is they just combined it because I am clairaudient. Usually in really high stress situations, I will hear it really well or in theta. And when theta, that's when you're first waking up or going to sleep. And that does not serve me well during the day as I'm not going off to sleep, you know, all the time. So, you know, the clairaudient is uh, at only at certain I can't control that yet. I guess that's what you could say. It's not fully like all day long, which I'm kind of glad about. I don't know how I would be with that, but the pictures, the movies, the you know, I tend to use people laugh because you know they can only use what you've got to work with. So a lot of
Right.
times I might get
Right.
Harry Potter visuals or Stephen King book visuals because I'm a very visual person.
Right.
So, you know, I might get those type of things and I relate it to what their experience is and then it makes sense, you
Well, that
know.
makes
Like
sense because every person is so different. So the experiences you've had in this life are going to help you use the gifts that you have. What you
exactly.
said was really interesting is the branch thing combining. I mean, I somehow understood it, but then I get down this whole like idea of dimensions of how many times is Joe Borowsky living this life right now, and in how many directions is it going? And is there ever a time where two things come together because one might have gone a different way? I mean, it can get really complicated. And
Well,
when I
they just showed me fizzling it out, like some fizzle out. I don't know if
Okay.
that's, yeah,
So
they just
yeah, so
showed me
some
like some
fizzle
fizzle
out,
out.
and then maybe
Mhm.
those combine in. So what you said, you might have had a few clairs, and all of a sudden, you on some other dimension did fizzle out. So instead it came together. Now, some people
Yeah,
might be listening to this and be like, what on earth? But
I
I get to hear I don't even like to use the word crazy anymore, because we have a bad history of that, of the way that we used to use that. So I would say it's the, the unknown, the things that we're just learning, the things that we're just becoming more aware of. And I have my own beliefs, and I'm just listening to everyone's experiences and putting all those things together and trying to understand it all myself. So,
Well, I think there's levels on the other side. I don't think I don't I don't believe that when you pass that all of a sudden you have this wealth of you understand everything. I mean, God love the people that understand quantum physics. I don't, but God
right.
love them. They go and they might understand more when they pass, but they're not going to. I get the sense that there's levels, and then eventually you just don't want to come back, and you
Mm.
won't, or you'll go somewhere else. Like there's other planets. I mean, I don't really think that we're the only life out there. Actually, as a matter of fact, I know we're not. So, I mean, don't get me started. We don't want to turn this
We don't.
into they're walk among us. I mean, there are hybrids everywhere. God, people, we were seated. So I don't want to really get into that, but if
That's
you ever
that.
want to get into that, I'm your
Yeah.
person.
That's definitely another option for another podcast episode for sure. But yeah, it can definitely go in so many directions. But that's the beauty of communication, the beauty of hearing ideas and things from other people. And there's all of a sudden these people that are showing up that I'm interviewing, that I feel are I mean, you have something wrong with your body, you go to a doctor, right? You have something wrong
Mm-hmm.
with your teeth, you go to a dentist. Now all of a sudden you have people who are passing over and coming back and have this wealth of knowledge from some other experience. Well, why aren't we turning to them to ask some questions, right? I mean, it makes sense because we haven't all had those experiences. So that's the way I look at it. That's just
No,
where I'm
it,
at.
it is a great way to look at it. And right now we're in a shift of consciousness. So you can expect bad things to happen, but you've also got um, where we are in a mental illness crisis. You have a lot of people that do not know how to handle their emotions. That is going to amp up. I'm being told that's not going to decrease anytime soon. You're going to have certain events where people, you know, there are some people that can handle things a lot easier, make sense of it, and then they find it kind of hard to believe that other people can't. Well, guess what? There are other people out there who can't, and they really need other people to help, give them some guidance and directions. And then you look at it, and I promise I won't stay on this, but we live in a big pharma society. Yes, I'm not. After everything that's happened to me, trust me, I don't take anything anymore. But, we live in a big pharma society that unfortunately has side effects that cause, depression, causes suicidal tendencies, causes all these things. So we're definitely more aware of that now, where before we weren't. And you definitely have people that, you know, are doing these things that are, I mean, I don't want to use the word normal, but you have these people that are really just have no direction and they just don't know how to handle the energy shifts. And there are going to be some, pretty wild energy shifts. So you have people like your show, you have other people that are around that are going to definitely be of service. They are here to help. You're going to start seeing them. the transformation specialist labels start taking off. You're going to start seeing, you know, the energy readers start taking off. You're going to start seeing, you know, just I guess the psychiatric or psychologist, you know, or social worker things, they're going to start taking off, because now we're all going to be in a service minded. So once that energy starts seeping out, you know, you're going to start seeing those fields rising, you know.
I mean, it
That's
doesn't,
my opinion.
that doesn't surprise me at all. I could see that happening. I think I'm already seeing it happening. So just two last questions that one of the ones, and, you know, I know you got, when you were talking about it, you got a little bit emotional about it, but when we talk about Yeshua, you talk about this experience you had. This was it, were you on the bus when that happened, or like, how did that
No,
happen?
I was already put back at home. I had already got off the bus, then got really upset because I realized that it wasn't, I realized when what they were showing me wasn't a future thing, it was a scenario to make me, to elicit a feeling of wanting to help, you know, wanting to help somebody. They used somebody from my childhood is what they did.
Okay.
And it elicited the feeling that I had to help this person. And so I got off the bus, but then it didn't happen. And I really got upset because at that point I realized that they had me, I don't want to say tricked me, but yeah, tricked me into making the decision. And once I got off that bus, I wasn't going to heaven anymore, if you want to call it heaven. I wasn't going to the other side. I wasn't doing it anymore, but I still was sick. And Yeshua is the one who healed me. This isn't the first time I've talked to Yeshua. And since I've been back, I've actually, man, if I wrote down half of this stuff, it was, you would literally think that's why I said, Steve, I didn't think I was really that crazy anymore if he went through all that. And I'm like, oh, wow, you know, I'm talking to Yeshua now. I've got Yeshua. I've got, you know, I'm not Catholic. And, you know, I've got Mother Mary, and, you know, I'm getting energies of Joan of Arc, you know, I'm getting all these energies, and not just religious, you know, I'm getting all these other energies as well. But Yeshua was not the first time I talked to Yeshua. And I have this sense, and I can't attest to it, but I'm pretty sure that's one of the things that they did not let me remember from my first near-death experience, because they tamped it down. I don't remember that love feeling, you know, from my very first one, because I'm pretty sure Yeshua has sent me back. You know, they were telling me, and I was sitting there saying, no, I'm staying. You know, I'm waiting for that gateway to light up because I'm going in it. So I'm pretty sure it was Yeshua who sent me back. And when he healed me this time, because he did, he healed me. And when he did, you know, you're not really well right away, but your body starts to reverse, you know, because I died, and it starts to reverse. But even he had to tamp down his energy around me then.
Wow.
So yeah, because I have always wanted to go home. It's the best way I can explain it. I don't know if you're familiar with Medical Medium. He wrote a book, his first one, I believe, when he was telling his story. And I actually can't pick up the book now because of it. This was after my first near-death experience. He had named an angel, which is totally wiped out of my mind. Can't tell you the angel's name, but he named an angel. And so help me, I was devastated for weeks. And I got so homesick that I shook when I picked his book up.
Wow.
So it's now on my shelf in the back in the corner, but I can't. He's got a lot of good things in there too, but I just can't seem to open up the book again because of the the reaction that I had and the depression that it causes. So
Mm.
that angel is somebody very familiar with me. And since this
Wow.
last near-death experience, I've been connecting with the seraphim, all these things that I don't know. And I've had, thank God for the internet, because I've had to go in and look it up. I don't know it.
Well,
And
isn't
I've
that
had to go in and
interesting?
look stuff up.
And that's interesting that you can look it up and you can confirm and go, oh, wow, this, like, where did
Mm-hmm.
this come from? Right. Because that's your own investigating of your own experiences. And for those who are listening at this point, if you've gotten through this whole thing, thank you, first of all. And the second thing is some people don't know who Yeshua is. And that's just from what I've heard
Jesus.
many times, Jesus Christ, it's
Mm-hmm.
the Christ energy, the power of
Well,
that.
from what
But
I understand, I've always been brought up to call him Jesus. I
right.
did not start calling him Yeshua until after this last near death experience.
Hmm.
And anytime before, before this last near death experience, he was always Jesus. Now Jesus doesn't really sound right, which is difficult for me because I pray a lot. I've always prayed. And I was taught to say Jesus,
Hmm.
but Jesus no longer feels right. Now Yeshua does.
Yeah.
And I don't know the story behind Yeshua yet, like
Okay.
why, but Yeshua is what feels right. So I go with what feels right. And sometimes when I pray, I accidentally say Jesus because I'm so trained in saying it, but I instantly don't feel right. So
Had you
I switch it to Yeshua.
had you heard the name Yahshua before your experience? Or see,
No,
that's
it was
that's the
always
part.
Jesus.
That's the part that always, when people say it, I'm like, okay, so who introduced you to that name? And they're like, no, it was during my experience. And I'm like, well, that's weird. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's, like, and then they look it up. Oh yeah, other people have had that. So yeah, I
But see,
think
it wasn't after my first one. It wasn't
mhm,
after my first one. It was after the last one.
right,
So the
right.
first one, after the first one, I was still calling him Jesus.
Hmm.
And, I leaned into him really a
Yeah,
lot during that time period because of the depression of not being able to go home. So,
yeah.
and it is very depressing. And I'm pretty sure there's near death experiences out there that more than likely talk about the depression afterwards
Oh
because
yeah.
it's real.
It's
It's definitely real.
I've been very fortunate to connect with the director of IONS. There's other group people that have been in IONS. The IONS group's great for that. People who've dealt with these things because they can help overcome. It's a different kind of depression they seem to get. People seem to get. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a homesick kind of depression, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's important for people out there that have had these experiences to stay connected with other people who've had them, because it can really help you get through the
Mm-hmm.
feelings you're feeling. And I also want to say to anybody who is still referring to Jesus.
It's
That's their understanding of it, and that makes
Mm-hmm.
complete sense. It's whatever whatever
Exactly.
whatever their energy is going towards. I'm open to all things. I've always tried to stay open to everything, and I always will be that way. Um, so it can get really tricky when you're talking to people, because some people have been raised in certain religions and they had a bad taste due to things, and they have experiences. But I like we've said it, we're all here growing, remembering, moving
And we're
through
not all on the
this
same
life.
path.
No,
We're,
and then you say, oh, I don't think any path is wrong, because we're all trying to experience it and we're all moving in this direction. So I've just opened to everybody. So I just want to say that. And and I also, I want to take the time and thank you for talking today, because there's been a lot come out from this.
oh, you're
And I
welcome.
think you really will help a lot of people. I'm sure a lot of questions will come up now for people, some people listening, but I think it might, help have closure in certain things too. Your loved ones
Mm-hmm.
are still around. They're still there
Oh
when you
yeah,
come
most
back.
definitely.
That's a big one I get from people. Just because, it's hard. Loss is very
Your
difficult.
animals too. Your animals too.
They're still there too. Hey, and what's interesting? You said that the dog saw you in your third experience, that second NDE. You said that the dog that was there knew you were there. And I'm like, that's probably why you see dogs sometimes just lose their mind. You see it and you go, what they're looking at a corner of a room and you're like, can't be that interesting. Like, what is it you're seeing? And I've had that with different pets I've had. So that
Yes.
makes sense. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so animals are souls too. Everything's energy, right? So it makes complete
Exactly.
sense.
Everything
Yeah.
is energy, different
Yeah.
consciousness, but like the flowers the first
Mm-hmm.
time,
Yeah.
they're energy and they're alive. And there is a consciousness, but it's different. That's the best way I can
Yeah.
explain it. It's a little different.
No, that's amazing.
Mhm.
I always end the episodes asking one simple question, and it's really what comes to you. And we've talked on a lot of different things, but if you could sum it up or give a, how whatever comes to your heart, why do you think we are here? Like, what's the main reason why are we incarnated? You're there, I'm here. Why are we here? What's the main purpose?
Well, I think we are evolving and our souls evolve, if you want to call it souls, our energy evolves. And I believe it's because, you know, not to bring up the seeding again, but we are evolving to be stewards, not just stewards of this earth into humanity, but there are other places, and we have to go through this. I mean, in order, like, the best way to explain it, once again, visuals, like Star Trek went out, and what did they do? You're not supposed to mess with like evolution or things like that, but we have to experience things in order to help others, because not everybody is at the same level. So I
Mm.
believe we're all here to become stewards, not only of humanity, but of other life as well. And who knows, if Elon Musk ever gets us on Mars or whatever, we will be stewards of those people as well as we go forward, of other planets as well, because there are other planets. There's other life out there. So
Wow.
to be stewards.
To be
That's
stewards in life. I love
mm-hmm,
that. Thank you
mm-hmm.
so much. This has been really interesting and educational for me, and I've loved it. I always turn to the audience and say, please like, share, and subscribe. Your continued
Mm-hmm,
effort to share the soul inspired episodes
mm-hmm,
helps other people. And that's, you talk about, you were talking about how you came back to help
mm-hmm.
people. And you said, you even mentioned me. I'm nobody special either. We're just here putting out the messages, but everyone has the ability to put those drops in the ocean, like keep the ripple effect going. And
Exactly.
that's why you hear these podcasts and episodes and people will say, like, share, and subscribe, right? And if what what's important is that it's being given over and over. That's what's beautiful about this is it can keep repeating, and then more people can see it, and then more people can get affected, and that's the ripple effect. We're continuously trying to raise our awareness, and that's
And
when I say it, I truly mean it. Like, share it, show somebody the video. Like, it's important.
it is very important. It does raise the consciousness, but also with you yourself, regardless of whether you realize it or not, you do have these gifts yourself, because I definitely pick them up. You have, and I don't want to step out because I don't have your permission, but I will say this one thing, is that your music, um, music is very beneficial to the spiritual aspect of people. And you actually, I guess what I want to say it is transformation and transmutation and alchemy. Your music is alchemy, and you can take something that is really, and transform it into something else. So you're very gifted, my friend. You're very, very gifted, and I do see that about you.
Thank you for sharing it. I appreciate you
You're
saying
welcome.
that. I will end the episode with that. Thank you again so much for being here. And thank you, everybody, for listening to The Soul Inspired today.
You're welcome.
So